Hi there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Andrea and I recently committed to the practice of posting a long form video to YouTube every single day. And today is day 11 of me showing up and it feels really good and I'm so grateful that you're here. It is a little bit warm in my bus today, so I have my fan on, so I apologize if you can hear a little bit of background noise, but hopefully my mic will pick up my voice really well and you don't have to hear that fan in the background. So today's topic that we're going to be talking about is the consequences of being selfish. The consequences of being a selfish woman, dealing with the pushback that comes with embodying this energy. So for the last several videos, I've been talking to you all about my Selfish Bitch Initiation, which is my 21-day program that begins on January 7th. And even outside of that, even if I weren't doing this initiation, this is what I would be teaching, because this is sort of like the foundation of my work, is helping women rise into a space of sovereignty. And Selfish Bitch is just sort of the portal or the gateway into having deeper discussions about that. But the same way that I'm talking about all of the power and the benefits and the amazing changes that will happen in your life as a result of really honoring yourself, honoring your sovereignty and your autonomy, getting very, very clear on your vision and saying no to anything that does not align with that vision for your life, that vision for your soul's mission. As much as I talk about those things, there are also consequences. There's the shadow side. And I'm about dark feminine wisdom, dark feminine embodiment. So I'm always going to shine a light on the shadows so that you're getting to see the full spectrum of the possibilities of this experience. And so the shadows, or the conflict, the pushback, the consequences that comes from being selfish, it's to be expected. And that's one of the things that I always prime my women for, is to expect for there to be some conflict in your life. If there's no conflict, if you don't receive any pushback from anybody in your field and from your energetic field, then that's amazing. But for the majority of you, there's going to be at least some resistance that you're going to experience from some of the people in your life, whether it's family members, a spouse, children, people that you work with, or people that just have expectations of you in general. And those expectations that they have of you is exactly why you're going to experience that conflict or that resistance when you start to fully embody this energy. And the reason why you're going to experience that resistance or conflict is, just like I said, these people had expectations for how you are meant to utilize your energy, utilize your life force. And these expectations are very often to the benefit of the people who have imposed these expectations on you. And so these expectations can be within your family, they can be larger societal expectations. So it could be something, it could be the example of you experiencing resistance with family, or experiencing resistance when talking about these things openly, like in open formats. I'm getting a lot of pushback right now. I wouldn't say a lot of pushback, but I am getting some pushback because my platform on Instagram is growing really rapidly, especially since I've been really honed in with making content and showing up and talking about these things that are really important to me in my work. And so it's attracting a lot of eyes onto my work. And so I'm talking about these concepts of being selfish. I'm shining a light on the shadow expressions of men and some of the more insidious or deeper spiritual meanings and mechanisms behind the behavior that men have towards women. And because I'm speaking so truthfully and honestly and boldly about a lot of these things and teaching women to look out for these behaviors and to really arm themselves with selfish energy, guarding themselves, setting those boundaries, it's creating some triggers in some of the people that are coming across my content, and they are giving me flack for it. And so that's just one of the consequences for you who is embarking on this journey of deeper embodiment and deeper sovereignty and really honoring selfishness as a pillar or a foundation for how you are honoring yourself. There are going to be people in your life who are going to be really perplexed by the changes that you're making, because for your entire life, you have been the go-to person for labor, whether it's physical labor, emotional labor, financial labor. You've been that go-to person. And when you start setting those boundaries and cutting off people who have been sort of eating from your trough without reciprocating anything in return, they're going to be upset about that. And so that can look like a lot of different ways. It can look like, setting boundaries with loaning family members money and then family members calling you selfish, or getting upset with you, or saying that you don't care about your family, or you've changed, or, you are not who I thought you were, or in some cases, you've been brainwashed. I've literally been accused of being brainwashed by my own mother, because when I was in the I don't want to say the beginning, but several years ago, when I was really diving into deep shadow work and I started showing up differently in my relationship with her, she accused me of being in a cult. She accused me of being brainwashed. And that was the most, to her, the most logical explanation that she could come up with for why I was no longer engaging with her the way that I was engaging with her. And so these are things that are going to happen. But once you start experiencing this conflict and this pushback that comes from you embodying this new energy, that's one of the signs that you're doing the right thing. It's one of the signs that you are on the correct path, you're on the correct track, and you're starting to shift the trajectory of your life. Your reality is starting to shift around you because you are changing. And when you change, when you think about yourself and feel about yourself differently, when you see yourself differently, everybody else in your reality is going to have to catch up to this new perception that you have of yourself and this new way that you are embodying this frequency that you have moved into. And so it's going to take time for people to recalibrate. It's going to take time for people to get used to it and to accept these new standards and accept these new boundaries and accept this new version of yourself that you are showing up as. And so it's to be expected. And I always like to let women know that it's to be expected, because it can be kind of jarring the first time you start setting those boundaries, and people who you've never had any issues with, who have always been loving and supportive and have come off in these ways to you, all of a sudden are taking issue with you, or they're talking about you behind your back, or they're saying unkind things to you, or calling you names. The reason why they're doing that is because by you moving out of your comfort zone, you are also forcing them out of their comfort zone. So you moving out of your comfort zone of being the person who always says yes, always does the planning, always shows up, always overgives, always just provides to people in your world, even without reciprocity. You moving out of that comfort zone means all of the people who have been comfortable with you doing these things, doing this labor, constantly showing up, constantly giving, they're going to be confused, because what they've grown accustomed to and what they've grown comfortable with is no longer their present reality. And so this is why people get frustrated, and what they want to do is they want to trigger you back into that old behavior. So this is why they will call you selfish. This is why they will call you a bitch. This is why they will say you've changed, or you're not the good person, or the people that you're around are a negative influence on you, or why are you listening to Andrea tell you to be selfish? She doesn't know what she's talking about. Whatever it is that people are going to say to you or do to you, they are doing that to trigger you back into your old behaviors. And they want to trigger you back into your old behaviors because that's what's comfortable and familiar for them. And so part of this process isn't just training yourself to show up in this new frequency and to show up in this new energy. It's also training the people in your life to recognize and accept and respect the new boundaries that you've set for yourself. Now the challenging, or I'm already talking about challenging things, but another challenging thing that comes from, being in this new frequency and holding this new energy is that you're going to have to let go of some of your relationships. Some of your relationships are going to dissolve because of this. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of women won't change. They won't grow or evolve. They won't step out of their comfort zone. They won't embody the version of themselves that is calling to them, begging for them, demanding that they rise and elevate their consciousness, these women are afraid to change because they don't want to lose people that are in their lives. And so you are holding back your own growth. You're holding back your own evolution. You're creating stagnancy in your energy, which then manifests in stagnancy within your body, which then turns into diseases and illnesses, depression, autoimmune issues. All of these things start to happen within your body because you're holding yourself back from being the version of yourself that you were meant to be. And you're doing that out of fear of letting go of a relationship that's no longer aligned for where you're going. And it's really hard to recognize and reconcile with the reality that as you're evolving and elevating into new frequencies, that the people who were in your old frequency can't always go with you. And so one of the, a metaphor that I love to give is that frequency attunement, think of it like changing a radio station. I know we all have like iPhones and Apple Music and all these things now, so a lot of us aren't even listening to the radio as much anymore. But some of you remember what I'm talking about when you get in your car and you're changing the radio station. What happens sometimes is when you're turning the dial, or I'm giving my age, I'm almost 40, so we had dials once upon a time. But when you're pressing that button and changing the radio station, sometimes those radio stations are just full of static noise. They're full of static noise. They're not on the frequency that you're resonating with. And then you keep changing the radio station, then all of a sudden the static and the noise and the disjointed sounds that you're hearing becomes really clear and really beautiful. And you're like, that's my station. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is where I'm landing. And so as you're growing and evolving and you're constantly turning the dial on your radio station and you're tuning to new frequencies, higher frequencies, there are going to be people that are on those old radio stations, those old frequencies that are not also turning the dial to elevate to where you're going. And so what starts to happen is your experiences with them, your interactions with them start to sound like static. They start to sound like distortion. They start to sound like there's no resonance there. It's because you're no longer on the same frequency as these people. And so part of evolving and growing as a human being is recognizing that as you are elevating into new states of consciousness and thus new states of reality, there are people in your previous reality that are not going to be welcome in this new phase of life that you're going to. Now, can those people eventually rise into that frequency? Yes, absolutely, they can rise into that frequency. I'm sure some of you have had experiences where you have a very close friendship or a close relationship with someone, and then there's a falling out that happens, or a disagreement, or you just grow apart and you slowly stop talking to each other, and then years go by, and then all of a sudden one of you reaches out, or you run into each other serendipitously, or something happens that brings you back into each other's field, and then you reconnect and you realize that you both have grown and you both have evolved. And that's a really beautiful outcome that can happen as long as you stay on your path and give that person permission to stay on their path. So sometimes these relationships need to dissolve and they can come back around again, but sometimes relationships will dissolve and that was the entire purpose and point of that relationship. There's a lesson or a gift or something that you needed to learn about yourself through your relationship with them that has run its course. It has served its purpose, and it's no longer needed for where both of you are going in your lives. Not just you, but them as well. You're no longer needed on their journey for whatever reason. And so I want you to understand that this is a very difficult part of evolving. This is a very difficult part of coming back into restoration and repair within yourself, is just understanding and accepting that not everybody is going to be able to go with you. And the people who are going to push the hardest for you to stay the same are the people that have the most vested interest in you staying the same, because there's some benefit, there's some tangible benefit, or even if it's not tangible, it could be an energetic benefit that is comfortable for them that they need you to stay in that same place. Maybe you being insecure and having low self-esteem makes them feel better about themselves. So when you start raising your self-esteem and you start looking in the mirror and recognizing that you are that girl, that's going to trigger jealousy or inadequacy within them. And so they need you to stay small. They need you to stay insecure because that's how they're able to feel better about themselves. So that type of person will tear you down or say, girl, your head's getting too big, or you're getting really full of yourself. Those are the types of things that they're going to say to you to keep you in that small mind frame that allows them to feel better about themselves. So I want you to recognize these tactics. I want you to understand that all of these responses that you're going to be getting, not going to be getting, because it's not a guarantee that this will happen, but it could happen. It's very possible and it's very common. But I want you to understand that these experiences that you might encounter with the people in your life are there to test you in a way. They're to test, are you really ready for this? Are you really ready to step into this new era, to step into this new frequency? And those people are going to challenge you to stay in that older frequency to see if this is what you really want. And so one of the things that I say, like as I teach this in my masterclass, my Selfish Bitch masterclass, is that people, whether they stay in your life or whether they leave your life, it's a great thing because you are shifting into a new version of yourself that's commanding a deeper level of respect. And so those people are either going to realize, actually, I can't respect you in this frequency that you're in, or I can't I can't accept this. I can't accept this because of the way that it makes me feel inside about me. And sometimes those people are going to remove themselves from your life, or you're going to have to say, this relationship is no longer in alignment and I don't want to see you anymore. We can't see each other anymore. Or those people are going to say, oh, she's making changes. She's doing the damn thing. Let me get a little bit of that. Like, let me learn from her. Let me observe from her. I respect that she's standing up for herself now. So I'm going to shift and change the way that I'm talking to her because I know that the way that I've been showing up previously in this relationship isn't going to fly. And so those are the outcomes, like the two most common outcomes that you're going to get from honoring this new version of yourself. And either way, you win. Either way, you command greater respect for the people or with the people in your life, or those people take themselves out and you don't have to worry about it. So you win either way. There's no loss here. And you know, I don't want to be flippant and say there's no loss, because sometimes these are relationships that mean a great deal to us. They mean a lot to us, and it is painful when those relationships dissolve. And so it's important for you to, you know, honor the grief of letting go of what's no longer serving you. Honor the grief that comes from having loved this person, and also the grief that comes from realizing that you gave much more to this person than they were giving back to you. And recognizing that, you know, the dissolution of this relationship, as painful as it is, it's what's necessary for both of your growth and both of your evolution. Because a lot of you, in your overgiving and in your people pleasing and, you know, having to be the rescuer and the savior for a lot of people in your life, you're actually coddling and what's the word I'm looking for? It's like right on the tip of my tongue. Not coddling, but enabling. You're enabling these people. You're enabling people from living out the consequences of their actions. You're enabling them from experiencing the fallout of their behavior, the fallout of who they are being and showing up as in the world. So when you know, don't honor yourself and you don't allow them to experience those consequences, you are stepping in the path of their growth. You're stepping in the path of their evolution, and you're doing both of you a disservice. And so I just want you to be clear that, again, these relationships must be grieved. There is grief that comes from, you know, losing or letting go of someone that is no longer aligned for you. And when I say there's no loss, what I mean is that, you know, you're gaining something, because by you releasing this energy that this person holds that's no longer aligned with where you're going and your frequency, you're now creating space for more aligned and reciprocal relationships to come into your life. So this is the example of the woman who, has dated emotionally unavailable men, who is overgiven, who has paid all the bills and given him money and coddled him and, given him so many things that he didn't value because he didn't have to earn the right to access these parts of yourself. And when she finally recognizes her worth and stops enabling and coddling men and takes time to come back into her sovereignty, to love herself, to recognize her value and what it is that she's worth, then she calls in the man who is actually aligned for her. She calls in the man that is going to honor her and is going to pour into her and provide clarity and provide stability and provide a sense of safety within the parameters of that relationship. But you can't call in that aligned divine masculine if you're still giving your energy and entertaining the distorted masculine. And so that's what I mean when I say there's no loss. Like, yes, there's grief and you're letting go and releasing something, but you're creating space for something even better to come into your life, to come into your field. And so yeah, like one example that I love to give before I wrap this up is, I mentioned a little bit about my own mother and some of the things that my mother said to me, when I was first going through the deep shadow work that I had to experience and move through in order to be sitting in this seat that I'm sitting in now, where I can speak to you with this clarity and this conviction and this power and this confidence. I used to, I, without going into the depths of like my childhood and all of that, have a very challenging relationship with my mother. And my mother did a lot of things to me as a child that were very traumatic, that I have had to do a lot of work to heal from. And, throughout my 20s, I was very angry. I was very, very, very angry at my mom, just angry in general, but a lot of anger towards my mom because that mother wound goes so deep. And we would be on the phone and I really needed her to validate my reality, to validate my perception of events that happened as a child. I needed her to acknowledge the things that she did to me. And I had just this need that I was constantly externalizing and putting on her. And when we would have conversations, they would go left very quickly because my mother, she can't hear me ask her questions, or she can't hear me say, this is what I went through and this hurt me. She doesn't have the capacity for that. But at that time, I didn't respect the capacity level that she had. So I would get angry and I would we'd be raising our voices on the phone and I would be so upset and I would cry and I would hang up and I would just be so mad, like for hours, days sometimes. I would be so mad. And when I finally decided I don't want to show up in this energy anymore. I don't want to give her my power anymore, because by me needing her validation and her acknowledgement of what it was that I had gone through, I was giving her the power to my peace. And so when I stopped giving her power to my peace and we would be on the phone and she would start raising her voice, I would say, I don't deserve to be spoken to like this. If you're going to raise your voice at me, we can't talk. And she would override my boundary and I would just hang up the phone. And then it got to the point where every time she would raise her voice at me or say something out of pocket, I would just hang up the phone, hang up the phone, hang up the phone. And then over time, what started to happen is she started, we'd be on the phone and she would start to get a little hype. She'd get a little hype. And then she would say, whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, we're going down the wrong road. We're going down the wrong road. And she would check herself. And she started checking herself. She started, pausing, taking a breather, things like that started helping to shift the energy of the conversation, because what I had started teaching her was that if you're going to speak to me this way, we can't have a relationship. And so she started showing up differently in our interactions. And it's still not perfect today, but it is so much better than it used to be. And the relationship that I have with my mom is completely different from the relationship that I had with my mom 5 years ago, especially 10, 15 years ago. It's gotten so much better, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But part of that was for me recognizing that I'm going into this new frequency and I can no longer show up in this energy, and I can't allow her to pull me into this energy. And that's what she tried to do initially, because when I wouldn't engage with her in that volatile way that she was used to and comfortable with, she wanted me to be upset. She needed to say things to trigger me, to get me back into that old energy and that old frequency. And I wasn't having it. I was holding firm. And so that is how powerful you are. You have the power to not only change yourself, but you have the power to change the way other people engage with you in your life. You just don't know this about yourself yet, because you don't trust yourself enough yet, because all of your sense of self, your sense of identity, your sense of validation and acceptance is still being externalized into other people. But when you are fully resourced within yourself and you recognize who you are, and nobody needs to validate your experiences, nobody else needs to validate your truth, nobody needs to validate who you are, your sense of identity, then they no longer have power over you. And that is the power and the gift and the grace that comes from this experience that I'm teaching women. This is why I talk about being a selfish bitch, because it's about releasing the stigma around being perceived negatively by other people in your life, because that is how you free yourself from their perceptions. Once you are no longer cowed by people seeing you negatively, then you get to actually become who you are. You get to become who you were meant to be, the person who lives inside of you, who has been calling you all of this time, but you've been too afraid to embrace her because all of your sense of self and identity has been externalized to other people. So I'm going to wrap this up here. Thank you so much for being here, listening to this video. If you are interested in diving deep into the shadow work of really coming into your sovereignty as a woman and learning how to hold your center, hold the pose, hold the frequency of your new embodiment despite the pushback that you're going to experience from people in your life, because it's inevitable that somebody is not going to like the new you. They're not going to like this version that you're rising into. And again, it's because so many people are depending on you as a resource for them. And when you're no longer becoming a resource for somebody else, they have to learn how to be resourced within themselves. And most people are just not fully equipped to do that. But this is what I'm teaching you in Selfish Bitch, and in the Selfish Bitch initiation, is how to be fully sovereign, fully resourced within yourself, so that you don't need any external validation, no external acceptance. You know exactly who you are, and you're moving from that place. So if you're interested in joining the immersion, still enrolling, we start on January 7th. You can read more about that. I'm going to drop the link in the comments below, and the link is also in the description box. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know how this video landed for you, how this has shown up in your life, or if it triggers some fears or resistance in you, because it's scary. I'm not going to deny or lie to you that this isn't scary, because it is. It's scary to step into this frequency, but it is the most beautiful act of self-love that you will ever embark on, and your entire life is going to change in the most beautiful and magical ways if you give yourself the gift of honoring who you are and who you are meant to be. So let me know how you're feeling in the comments below. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Let me know what other videos you'd like to see me do, what other topics you want me to talk about, or if there's something that I mentioned in this video that you would like for me to expand upon. Let me know in the comments, and I'll add it to my video list for you, because I have been sharing videos every single day, and it's been feeling really good. And I appreciate being able to drop in and offer these tips and tricks and these lessons for the people that are finding me here on YouTube. So I so appreciate you. I thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next video.